think we're going to talk, the next two talks, I think we're going to sort of consider that.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the computational complexity of small universal Turing machines. I'm going to mostly focus, talk a little bit about program size complexity, but mostly focus on time complexity. And then the next talk, Turlock-Neary will talk about program size complexity. I'll present some results that have happened in the past, and then I'll try and set these, this week at the Isaac Newton Institute, we've been working on with Reiner Gleichig and Niall Murphy on Turlock-Neary on this Hasson-Jaeger machine that's on display here, and I'll talk a little bit about some results we did on that machine and set let's say, the theory of the Hasson-Jaeger machine in the context of the theory of small universal Turing machines. So, okay, so what is this field, this small universal Turing machines? Well, we're sort of interested in devices or programs that appear extremely simple. So either they have a very simple intuitive description or they're very short. But on the other hand, they have extremely complicated behavior when you set these things running. So universal programs of a certain kind. So two of the aims in the field are concerned with decidability and undecidability, so interested in finding small universal Turing machines or showing that none exist. But also we're interested in categorizing trade-offs between program size and other properties of our models. So in particular, time complexity is what I'll talk about today. And this second aim involves applying tools from computational complexity theory to simple models of computation, such as small universal Turing machines, tag systems, cellular automata, the Hasson-Jaeger machine, and so on. So in 1956, Shannon published a paper where he showed that two-state Turing machines are universal. He also showed that two-symbol Turing machines are universal. So this kind of thing is sort of embedded in our consciousness now, it's well known. But this was the last sentence in his paper, and he said, oh, what is the smallest Turing machine you could find? What is the smallest program you could write down that's universal? So, so let's think about that for a second. So on my machine, so I could have like the Java virtual machine here on my computer. And what that machine can do is it can take any Java program and it can run it, you know. And Java virtual machine takes many lines of code. And you might ask, well, how small could that be? And that's an analog of Shannon's question. So could you write a piece of code that's, I don't know, 4 lines long that could simulate any other piece of code? Or could you show that it's not possible in some language to do that in 4 lines of code? So over the years, there have been a few researchers who've enjoyed working at this game of trying to find the smallest programs that are universal. And so this slide mostly focuses on some results on one-tape machines. Doesn't even have all the results on one-tape machines. But we have a very early machine by Moore, who actually worked with Shannon in IBM Labs. And he published a small machine in 1952. Shannon published the results that I mentioned in 56. And then over the years, we've got this sequence of papers of people trying to find smaller and smaller machines. So let me help make things a bit more concrete. So I have here, okay, so first of all, we heard a little bit about Turing machines in the last talk. So what a Turing machine is it's a computing device where you have a tape with cells in it, and the tape is infinite in both directions. I'm going to consider deterministic single-tape Turing machines only. And we have a tape head that's reading a symbol on the tape, and the tape head, so we have a program that tells this tape head how to act, so that the head can read and write to the tape, and the program describes how the tape gets modified. And so in particular, the program has a number of states it can be in, okay, so finite set of states. And when the program is in a given state, it could read a certain symbol on the tape, there are a finite set of symbols, and then it could go to a new state, write a new symbol, move left or right. And so because the action of the program, so it's a deterministic machine, the action of the program is completely determined by the state it's in and the symbol it's reading, then it's not hard to see that the length of the program is bounded by the product of the number of states and symbols used by the program. So that's an upper bound of the length of the program. And so here I'm going to plot, I'm going to have a plot that's going to help me describe program size of machines. So these are the number of states on the horizontal axis, symbols on the vertical axis. And so in the 1960s, Shigeru Watanabe gave a Turing machine that was universal, had 8 states and 5 symbols. So I plot this at this coordinate. Sometime later, Marvin Minsky in the US at MIT gave a machine with 7 states and 4 symbols. So I've also drawn on this plot a curve which denotes machines that have a decidable halting problem. So for example, machines with 2 states and 2 symbols have a decidable halting problem. And so from that we infer that there are no universal machines with 2 states and 2 symbols. So so you can see here, if you look at the dates here, Watanabe has machines in 60 and 61, and Minsky has machines in 60, 61, 62. So these guys were sort of having a competition to see, who's the smartest guy, who could have the smallest machines. And I showed just 2 machines on the previous slide, but they had quite a number of machines that they published. And in that particular game, with those particular rules, Minsky found the smaller machine, right? So his machine is clearly smaller than Watanabe's. He uses less states and less symbols. To beat Watanabe, what Minsky did was he invented sort of a new technique for simulating Turing machines. So if you want to show a machine is universal, you could give a program that directly simulates Turing machines. So your universal program, U, on its tape, it takes machines M that it wants to simulate. So take one particular machine M, one given instance, simulates that machine M on its input, okay? And so that's the way you might read about these things in textbooks and so on. But another thing you can do is say, okay, instead of directly simulating Turing machines M, what I'll do is simulate some intermediate model that has previously been shown to be universal. And if that intermediate model is somehow intuitively simple enough, maybe I can simulate it with a smaller program than if I directly tried to simulate a Turing machine. So Minsky invented this technique of simulating a simple model called a 2-tag system. A 2-tag system is a kind of tag system which were invented by Post, and they were proven universal by Koch and Minsky in '63. And the part of the slide that's going to be kind of most relevant for this talk is this little red arrow here. So Koch and Minsky showed that for every Turing machine M, there exists a 2-tag system that simulates that Turing machine. But their simulation was exponentially slow. So if your Turing machine M runs in time t, the Koch-Minsky construction runs in time slower than 2 to the t. So it's exponential in t, right? So it's 2 to the 2t, t squared, something like that. And so that means, in particular, if you want to give a small universal Turing machine that's simulating 2-tag systems, which in turn are simulating Turing machines via this exponential slowdown, then your Turing machine is going to be an exponentially slow, your small Turing machine is going to be an exponentially slow simulator of Turing machines. So this particular machine here, although it's smaller than Watanabe's, it runs exponentially slower than Watanabe's. And then later, there was a sequence of papers by particularly Yuri Rogozhin, followed by some others, who give machines denoted by the red circles all along here. And these machines just take Minsky's technique and extend it to other state symbol pairs. And so I have here the time overhead for these machines. So you can see it's exponential in the time t of the simulated machine. Right. So, Rainer, what date would you give for when Hassen-Jaeger built his Turing machine?
Well, my current estimate is 1960s. Because of the questions yesterday, I have sent some emails out today, because we have another one that is, let's say, programmable, not fixed. And I cannot say it exactly now, but I hope that I soon get a response from some people who actually saw the machines.
Yeah.
And they might have told it me already, but I was more interested in the techniques behind. So I estimate between 60 and 70 at least.
Oh, okay.
Closer to 60.
Okay, so it's interesting because a lot of some of the results I'm talking about here are early 60s. So there was a lot of activity in the 60s on small universal Turing machines. So Turlock's going to talk more about program size, as I said, in the next talk. But I'll just briefly mention that this Hassen-Jaeger machine that's on display here at the Institute as programmed, is a 4-state, 2-symbol, 3-tape machine. So it's smaller than some of these machines. So it's got 4 states and 3 symbols, but a very important point is that these are 1-tape machines. I've denoted here. Oh, sorry, you're right. Yes, it's 4-state, 2 symbols. This figure denotes 1-tape machines, and this particular machine of Hassen-Jaeger's has 3 tapes, which makes quite a difference. And I'm not going to get into that, but I just wanted to put it on this slide because of the date and so on. Okay. The point is it's a different model. Okay, so all right, so I've been talking about small universal Turing machines, so small programs that are universal. And I mentioned this tag system model that was also shown to be universal by Koch and Minsky. And in this field, there are a bunch of related models that have very simple descriptions and that are known to be universal. So for example, one of these is rule 110, which is a type of one-dimensional cellular automata. If you imagine the top row of black and white pixels here, so if you think about that, extended infinitely in both directions, I'm going to describe how this cellular automata operates. So each cell has a state, 1 or 0, and the state is updated, of each cell is updated based on its own state and that of its 2 neighbors. And so to specify such a cellular automata, you need 8 rules. And then you can imagine if I've got an initial configuration on the top row of pixels, and then based on that update that I described, you let the thing run forward in time, you can make this so-called space-time diagram. Now, this was shown to be universal by Matthew Cook, and it was conjectured earlier by Stephen Wolfram. And the original construction to show this was universal was a masterful construction, very interesting construction. But the construction was exponentially slow. So if you take a Turing machine that runs in time t, this thing could simulate the Turing machine via that construction, but ran in time slower than 2 to the t. And so if you look at a picture like this, it looks kind of messy at first, but then you can see that there are some structures, and they sort of bump it. So it looks quite random in the beginning, let's say, and then becomes more structured near the end. And you can ask yourself, is there interesting computation going on here? Well, in some sense there is, because the thing is universal, okay? So, many questions you might ask about this cellular automata are undecidable, for example. But it's also the case that if it's proof of universality, if it was necessarily exponentially slow, then we could be open. It could be the case that if we want to simulate this thing, we would not have to simulate it not have to simulate all steps explicitly, but perhaps we could ignore exponentially many. We could ignore, let's say, exponential areas of the space-time diagram in some sense. Okay, so the point I'm making is, if the hardest thing that this could do is simulate some other algorithm, and it's simulating that algorithm in a very slow way, well then maybe many of the steps it's taken are not real computation steps, but sort of padding or sort of junk steps. And then secondly, if you've got some simple model and you've shown it's universal, but it's universal in an exponentially slow way, and you want to apply that program or that universal system as a model of some physical system or a model of some other mechanistic system, well, it's less interesting if it's very slow, I think, because it's not giving an accurate model of the dynamics of the thing it's simulating. And even more importantly, we have here this guy, this little man here, this XKCD comic by Randall Munro. He's simulating the universe. So he says to simulate an entire universe using this universal rule 1-1-10 system, and he's doing it by laying down stones. And the result, I'm going to come back to this in a little while, but I'll talk about a result that has relevance here. So this rule 110 similar automata that I sort of segued into was shown to be universal by simulating cyclic tag systems, which were shown to simulate the two tag systems I mentioned before, which via the Koch-Minsky construction I mentioned, simulate Turing machines in an exponentially slow way. So via this proof, this rule 110 simulates these Turing machines very slowly. It was, And so then a little while ago we showed that this intermediate model, the cyclic tag system, can be shown to efficiently simulate Turing machines in polynomial time. And so this improves the simulation overhead on rule 110. And so it means that when we look at this space-time diagram, it somehow, although it may be padded with some sort of so rule 110 is capable of efficient computation, which means that there are not exponentially large padding gaps in these space-time diagrams. So there's much less, in fact. And so that's a sort of a non-technical way of saying the point I really mean, which is that prediction for this cellular automata is p-complete. So if we want to simulate this thing very far into the future, basically the best ways we can do it is by sequential explicit simulation, and we don't have any sort of nice closed form formulas that can help us to speed up prediction of this system. We can't simulate it in parallel, assuming well-known conjectures in complexity theory. Also, it means that this cellular automata is capable of efficient simulation. And more importantly, this guy who wants to simulate the universe by laying down stones in the pattern of rule 110 can do it much faster than he could before. Okay, so this result gives some evidence that extremely simple universal programs can compute efficiently. So,
can you tell us exactly what prediction means?
like formally?
You say prediction is pre-complete, but what is the decision problem?
So the decision problem is given a finite initial condition for rule 110, and given the index of a cell, for example, at the center of that.
The circuit value problem.
Yes, it's basically the circuit value problem applied to cellular.
Complete problem.
Yeah. So given an initial condition of rule 110, given an index of a cell, and given a time bound t in unary, what is the state of that cell after t time steps? That's one version of it. I can also state it in a way where I remove the time bound and I just ask about simulating the light, what they call the light cone. Okay, so this gives evidence you can have extremely simple. So when rule 110 is a very intuitively simple cellular automata to describe. There's only 8 rules used to describe its program, and it gives some evidence that maybe some simple programs can compute efficiently. And so we had these small machines that ran exponentially slowly, given by Minsky, Rogozhin, and others. And when we started work in this area, We found these machines denoted by the blue X's that simulate Turing machines, but with a t-squared overhead. So you give me a Turing machine that runs in time t, we'll give you a Turing machine with, for example, 8 states and 4 symbols that simulates your Turing machine in time t squared. Also 7, 5, and so on. So you look at this blue curve, and this tells you there are machines of this size and larger that run in time t squared. And then if you try to find smaller universal machines, the known results, is an empirical statement, the known results are that, oh, there's an exponential slowdown. So you could wonder, as I make my program smaller, do they get exponentially slower? Or in other words, are the smallest universal machines fast? And by fast, I mean polynomial time simulators. Okay, so remember this slowdown for the small machines is coming from, so they simulate 2-tag systems very efficiently, polynomial time, but this 2-tag simulation of Turing machines is exponentially slow. Okay, so I'll briefly mention what a 2-tag system is. So it's a kind of string rewriting system. And luckily, it's intuitively very simple, so I can describe it quickly. So it's a string rewriting system, it acts on a string. So I've got this string of symbols that I call the data word over a finite symbol set. A program is a finite set of rules that map a single symbol to a string. Computation step involves reading the leftmost symbol, and based on what that symbol is, I go and check my table of rules, and I say, do I have a rule for that symbol? And if so, I'm going to append the right-hand side of that rule to the right of my data word. And then I do a funny thing. I delete the symbol I read, which you might expect to do, but I also delete the second symbol after it. So I've ignored the second symbol. And so this is where the 2 in the 2 tag comes from. We delete 2 symbols. So I'll show an example. Next.
So is this non-deterministic? I think you may have more than one rule applied.
We use it deterministically, but you could have a non-deterministic version. Okay, so here's an example. I delete symbols in 2s, so I always write them in pairs, and I put these dots on the second of each. Put a dot on the second symbol in each pair. Okay, so this is a symbol set of my 2-tag system, and this is the rule set of my 2-tag system. So I have only 3 rules. So this is an example to tell whether a string is of even or odd length, assuming that string is in a special format at the beginning. So here's the string. The format is, I'm going to put it, there's going to be pairs of symbols, possibly followed by an X without a dot. Okay, so this could be any length. That description could be any length, right? Odd or even. So although I'm going to have the first pair have two hats on them, right? The bars on the top. So it's at least of length 2. All right, so let's do it. Let's do a simulation. So we read the leftmost symbol. We check, do we have a rule for that? X with a hat. We do. It says append YO. So we append YO to the right-hand side of the string. It's a 2-tag system, so we delete 2 symbols. We read the next symbol, an X. The rule I have is X goes to the empty word. So I append nothing, and I delete 2 symbols. I apply the same rule again. I read an X, so append nothing, delete 2 symbols. Read an X, append nothing, delete 2 symbols. Read X, append nothing, delete 2 symbols. And now I'm going to read this, the first letter of this YO pair that I appended in the beginning. My rule says Y goes to E. So I append E, and then I delete these 2 symbols, and I'm done. And so this E is my output and tells me the words of even length. I have no rule here for the letter E, no rule with E on the left-hand side. My system halts. If there was an additional X here and the word was of odd length, then I would have ended with an O. Okay. So it's a string rewriting system where I read on the left and I append on the right. I have no notion of internal state. So everything I do is based on the current read symbol. And this is what I mean when I use the phrase an intuitively simple system. I guess this is what I mean. It's a very simple programming language, right? But that makes it really hard to program. We don't have many tricks with this thing. So, there are two ways that I know of, in a sense, to program tag systems. One gives a universality result that's exponentially slow, and one gives a universality result that runs in polynomial time. So, and this detection of even and odd length is used extensively in the two universality proofs of two tag systems, actually. Okay, so usually we take a break, but we're going to skip that today. Okay, so so via the Koch-Minsky construction, these two tag systems are exponentially slow, and then at some point we showed that we figured out how to simulate cyclic tag systems efficiently with these two tag systems, and we'd already showed, I talked about on previous slides, that these things efficiently simulate Turing machines. And this showed that all of the smallest known universal Turing machines simulate arbitrary Turing machines in polynomial time. And this time bound here is t to the 8 log to the 4t can be improved to t to the 4 log squared t, which appears in Turlock's thesis. So that shows, playing with those tag systems shows that these machines that were exponentially slow can be made to run in polynomial time with this time bound. Because these systems are intuitively very simple, they're a good candidate for use in proofs where you want to show that other systems are universal. So if you invent some, DNA Turing machine or some small neural network or some of these other things, then you might look to the area of small Turing machines, tag systems, or Rule 110, or some other simple model to show that your new model is universal. So all of these systems simulate some of the things up here. So by showing the things up here efficiently universal, we get that these other systems are also efficiently universal. So what about Hassen-Jaeger's machine? So this is a machine that's on display here at the Isaac Newton Institute. I'm sure everybody here has seen it. If not, it's in the building just over there. I think Rainer took this photo. Yeah. Rainer Glaschik got his hands on this machine. Amazingly, which amazes me, he reverse engineered the components to figure out that there's a universal Turing machine encoded in the hardware of this thing with 4 states, 2 symbols, and 3 tapes. Okay, what else can I say? The tapes are non-erasing, which means that they're binary tapes of 2 symbols. But if you ever write a 1, then you can never erase it. And that's because the tapes write a 1 by punching a hole in the tape. So it's kind of tricky to undo that. So myself and Turlock and Niall have been visiting here for the last week with Rainer, looking at this machine. And so what did we learn? So we learned that Hassen-Jaeger's machine simulates a model by Hao Wang. And so this is how Hassen-Jaeger knows his machine is universal, because Wang showed that his machine is universal. This Wang machine has a single tape, can make left or right moves on that tape, can mark the tape, so you can punch a hole in the tape, okay? And it can jump based on a mark. So it's kind of go-to programming on a tape, I guess, is the way I would think about it. That's a rough description. Okay, so Wang proved that his model is universal 57 via an exponentially slow simulation of Turing machines. So based on our history and from this talk, you can see that the first thing we would do when we see this word is go, okay, is this necessary or not? Could we speed this up? And so on this visit, we showed that Wang's model from 57 can actually efficiently simulate Turing machines. And so this shows that the Hassen-Jaeger machine on display can also efficiently simulate Turing machines. And the proof of this It's kind of interesting for me. It did not go via tag systems the way we've done it many times before. We just came up with a different proof. So if you give me a Turing machine that runs in time t, and you give the Hassen-Jaeger machine a long enough tape, the Hassen-Jaeger machine will simulate that your Turing machine in time t cubed t and uses t squared space. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about the details of that, but we might write it up at some point. Yeah. Okay, so I'd just like to thank Turlock, Reiner, Niall, Matthew Cook, Eric Winfrey, and Shuki Brook and their groups, and these kind people for giving us money, and the Institute, which I forgot to add to the list. So, all right, thanks.
Any questions?
So there is another line of research that goes by the way of the Diophantine equations, right?
Yeah.
And in some sense, the advantage of that approach is that it's independent of the model. Here, you change the model and presumably results have to be done again.
Well, it's another model, I guess, the Diophantine equations itself, right?
Okay, so my question is, do you have any way to transfer results from this work to the Diophantine case?
Yeah, so I have not looked at that carefully, but I think that, so I think that some people are interested in finding the simplest forms of Diophantine equations that have some properties, right? But I have not looked at it myself, but it is interesting. I think Ryan wants to say
There is an
something.
article from Hassen-Jaeger from 1984, I think, that I got some information out of it, but mostly I skipped it because I plainly didn't understand this thing with the Diophantine equations. I now detected that in the book of Davis from 1958, there's a good connection between these two, and I know that the whole people in Münster worked on this. And so this would be, from my point of view, the next step to understand what's this. But plainly, I simply pushed it away because I didn't understand it. So it's interesting from you to hear that this might be a more independent way.
Well, I think some people have actually looked at this, like Matej Sajewicz has looked at it, you know.
But the people in Münster went very soon to register machines, and the article that we have is that he says that there is a very small two-state register machine with 4 registers that can simulate something like that.
Morgenstern also has some results on Diophantine equations, simple universal Diophantine equations, in his survey on upper bounds for decidability and undecidability. And he gives lower bounds on decidability for Diophantine equations and upper bounds. Now these aren't his results, they're collected from other people.
Thanks, Peter.